to today's very special event brought to you by the Center for Women's Leadership at the Forbes School of Business and Technology. Today's event focuses on advancing women leaders within the military. Here at the University of Arizona Global Campus, we have a very rich military student base and community. Many of our students are either active duty, military veterans, or part of a military family. For that reason, I know that our conversations today are going to be especially relevant and meaningful. We're extremely fortunate to have with us today some very esteemed women with extensive leadership experience in military and national defense. Moderating our panel today is Aisha Thomas. She is an organizational training, development, and leadership consultant and professional coach. She's an award-winning executive trainer who aims to improve the performance, resilience, and diverse talent management skills of leaders. Her expertise also extends to staff development. She's excelled in multiple leadership roles, managed numerous high-performing teams, and developed personnel from the first tier to executive level. As a member of the United States Air Force, she has proudly served her country during peacetime and global conflicts. Aisha has reached thousands, and her solutions-based approach has been recognized for improving organizational breakdowns and practices. Now, as our panelists are talking today, if you think of questions that you would like to ask them, feel free to pop those into the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll address those questions at the end of the session. Now, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Aisha Thomas.
Hello, everyone. I am really honored and excited to be a part of this conversation today with some fellow sister in arms. And I'm just really excited because I think this conversation is extremely important. So just thank you for this great opportunity. But before we get started, I would like to take time to introduce the fellow panelists that will be expanding this conversation focused on advancing women leaders in the military. So first, we have Staff Sergeant Brittany Timpson from the 31st Civil Engineering Squadron Requirements NCOIC, which is a non-commissioned officer in charge. Brittany Timpson has served 10 years in the United States Air Force as a civil engineering operations manager at locations in Alaska, Arizona, South Korea, and Italy. Nice, right? Alongside completing several tours to Southwest Asia. She currently serves as a technical expert for a 5-man team with daily responsibilities of ensuring proper and effective use of base resources. This in turn accomplishes their mission of providing infrastructural support to combat capability and quality of life base-wide. She continuously strives to develop as a leader and contributes to the career advancement of those around her. How are you, Staff Sergeant Timpson, or Brittany Timpson in this platform? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm good. Super excited to have you today. All right, so let's move on to the next panelist. So Staff Sergeant Caitlin Machete. She has been a part of active duty Air Force since 2014 as a security forces. In her 7 years, she has deployed to Qatar and Afghanistan. Throughout her career, she has grown a strong passion for leading and finding what being a good leader truly means. She believes understanding followership helps to be a good leader. Her drive and passion stems from wanting to make a difference and leave things, people, places better than how she found it. One of her favorite leadership quotes is from President Teddy Roosevelt. The more you know of human knowledge and understand how to connect with people and cultures of all sorts, the better leader you become. I love that. Welcome, Staff Sergeant Machete. How are you today?
Super great. Really honored to be here.
Awesome. And we will have someone additional that should be joining the conversation. I'm not sure she'll be joining, but I still want to make sure I provide this introduction as well. Juan Palaso will be joining us at some point. But Juan Palaso is the Special Assistant to the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness at the Pentagon. Prior to joining the Department of Defense, Juan was an Associate Director of Investment Bank Compliance and Operational Risk Control at UBS and a certified fraud examiner. She spent a decade in finance after serving in the U.S. Navy and was forward deployed in the Pacific region for Operation Enduring Freedom. Given her passion for the veterans community, she founded the Women's Veteran and Families Network. Juan is the chair of Veterans Roundtable at CFA Society New York and the co-lead of Women's Veterans of Wall Street. She works with senior leaders of Fortune 500 companies and nonprofits to facilitate roundtable discussions and best practices forums on hiring military veterans and military spouses. Juan holds an MA in Information Technology Management from Webster University. She is a graduate of Columbia University School of Professional Studies, where she earned a master's in nonprofit management. Juan is an adjunct associate faculty member of Human Capital Management Program and serves as an alumni advisory council member at SPS. Juan is married to a Navy veteran and they have 2 children. So Juan should hopefully be joining the conversation soon. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. So let's get into it, Caitlin and Brittany. All right. So as we really just navigate this question about advancing women leaders in the military, like I think back about when I first joined. I enlisted way back in 2003. Okay, I know I look 18, but I am not. And I remember I always had this idea, this vision to be a chief. Like I was like, I'm going to be a chief. And for those who are listening, they might be like, what is a chief? Right. So it's an E9. It's the top. It's pretty much the highest rank within the enlisted corps. Of course, there are different designations as well. But I just had this vision of doing that. And
whole landscape, right? And this extends beyond just women. We have allies, we have a network, we have synergies that are in both corporate America and in the government. And so I'm very hopeful in this sense, and seeing so many wonderful, like their number of very senior level appointees who have been appointed in this current administration who are leading on the forefront on these initiatives. So with that said, this is something that is very exciting and it's wonderful to be a part of during this time.
Yes, yes. And I love what you all said. I mean, representation is so important. And yes, we're not speaking on behalf of the Department of Defense, if anyone is watching, like the Department of Defense and the Air Force said. But again, you all provided really great perspective, especially, again, representation matters. When you see, that woman there, you see someone that looks like you, and you're like, you know what, it is possible. So, as we're transitioning and we're going from those first and it becomes something that is more common, it's going to be a beautiful thing to see as more women transition into those additional roles, into those leadership roles from those first tiers into the top tier. All right. So the next question is, what is one bias about women who serve that you find yourself always having to dispel or wish people did not have? Okay. What is that one bias? And I'll start off with you, Juan. What is that one bias that maybe you hear about women that you're like, I'm so tired of having to dispel this myth or this rumor or bias, or one you wish people didn't have?
Well, first and foremost, that women having served on the front lines. Women have been in war zones since the beginning of American Revolution, and so there has been multiple, well-known service members who happen to have a different sex organ than the typical service member that are not recognized. And unfortunately, that's something that across the board in the veteran space, we're still trying to articulate to the civilian population. And I think that in itself has been, I would say, a detriment to the community, and not understanding that women have had our backs from the beginning of the Revolutionary War is something that we need to continue being a champion of. And not to mention, we do have a female Medal of Honor recipient that was awarded, after her death. Nonetheless, we have at least one.
Yes, that is a regular one that you tend to hear. And with you, Caitlin, I mean, you're in security forces. A lot of people might not know what security forces is. So I would love you to answer next. First, explaining to those who might be like, what is security forces? And just talking about your perspective, maybe on that, and any additional bias that you're like, you know what, I'm tired of having to dispel this bias about women who serve.
Yeah, so a brief breakdown of security forces. We do everything from base law enforcement to base defense. So whether it's protecting assets of all kinds, planes, or just the people on the installation. And a huge bias that we get is we'll be standing at a gate, and this happened all the time, standing at a gate, and you'll have the older generation roll up and say right to your face, wow, they let the women hold all that gun and ammo. And it's just, why would we not be able to hold the same amount of ammo and the same weapons that my partner, a man standing next to me, is holding, you know? So that's a huge bias that is still live today that I stand to prove wrong. So.
Wow. And you even highlighted something else. There's generational differences. You know, I talk a lot about that in some of the trainings that I do. You know, you also have like this generational gap. So it's always, you know, and sometimes you're having like, you know, these Gen Zers, you know, younger millennials, they're having to say, you know, we see the world differently. We're looking for spaces to be more diverse. We're looking for that change. And then you have some, you know, those I call them the generation of the now and the generation of the future. And they're like, you know what, I don't like this. But again, you do also have some allies within the generation of the now that are truly about change as well. So there are some generational breakdowns as well that we have to navigate also. So thank you for highlighting that as well. What about you, Brittany? What are some biases that you're having to dispel or navigate, or you're like, I just want this to go away?
So one of the biases that I seem to notice, especially coming from like a male dominant career field like Caitlin, I work in civil engineer squadron. So typically male dominated. I literally can count on one hand how many female uniform members I've run into in a day on my compound, but is sticking women in positions where it has more of a secretarial position, like working behind a computer, doing paperwork, things like that, instead of putting them out in the field, actually doing hands-on jobs or things that will get your feet and your hands dirty. So that's one thing that, you know, I feel like you're gonna allow a lot of women to miss out on, you know, doing their actual job if you're sticking them behind the desk or, you know, keeping them from being in the field. So just, you know, make sure that we're putting women out there in those positions so that they can actually do their jobs and learn new things.
I love that. And interesting. So I retrained. So, you know, within most military branches, you have opportunities to retrain. So I actually started off in a civil engineering squadron. I was in supply. And again, very male dominated. You know, you're talking about these are the Power Pro plumbers, is male dominated. And you did see that when you did see the women within the organization, they were the secretaries. They were the ones in those roles. And it's like, what can we do to attract more women into those positions? But again, you have those societal things, and you do also have to navigate, you know, those biases that will place, hey, you should be in this position, or is a recruiting thing? Is it something that we have to really just, again, change the culture of the recruiting within leadership to ensure that, you know, this is a position, or these type of positions are also put in front of women, so we can bring in more diversity in those spaces as well. So thank you for highlighting that, Brittany.
No
All
problem.
right.
I'm actually 3-6, so I have the opportunity to go between both the customer service
awesome.
and the supply.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. All right. Wear two hats. All right. So next question. So let's really talk about some challenges, right? So what type of challenges have you had to personally navigate as you progress through the ranks? And we'll start off with you, Caitlin. And you know, you talked about a little bit, you know, the things you have to hear just from being at the gate. But what are some other challenges have you personally had to navigate as you have worked through and are navigating towards, you know, higher ranks and more leadership roles?
Definitely what struggle is, and I think that we can all relate, is that jump from senior airman to NCO, having to be an immediate leader and then in charge, and, you know, maybe change your friend group a little bit. And then progressing again, going from staff to tech, where you're jumping again on the board, and people taking you seriously is a big thing, unfortunately. So always presenting that professional image at every single second, I think, is so important, and it is unfortunately crucial to being a woman in this type of career field. Like you said, a predominantly male, it's a male career field. Like there's no, like she said, you can count on a hand how many females I see a day in my shop as well. And one slip up, and then unfortunately you're not taken seriously. And I think that that's just so unfortunate. So always minding your P's and Q's and maintaining your professionalism at all times is it definitely can be a struggle, because you'll see people will goof off, and you know that if you slide into that, then you might be you're probably not going to be as taken as seriously. So that's definitely one thing that struggles in my shop.
So what does it feel like having to navigate, feeling like you, because I know how it feels to like, I'm always have to be on my toes. So when you don't feel like you have room to make mistakes, like how does that feel? Like I want, the audience and those that are listening, how it feels where you're like, there's no room for mistakes when mistakes do truly happen.
It can be a very tense environment, for sure. But just as in other career fields in the military, small mistakes lead to bigger things all the time. So we're kind of trained and prepped for that already. And then moving into leadership roles, it's just a different one slip up and it can snowball into something else. So fortunately, all the leadership training and all my school and my extra stuff that I do preps me for stuff like this. However, the feelings are still very tense. It's very on edge. It's very eggshell. But I gotta say, it just makes me want to push harder and just keep going, to make sure that I don't slip up, and to make sure that I'm taken seriously, and to make sure that I'm doing everything I can.
Thank you. All right, Brittany, what about you? What is your perspective on what are some things you've had to personally navigate? Have you progressed through the ranks? What has that been like for you?
So one thing that I've experienced is maybe subordinates and even higher ups is putting that maternal pressure on me because I am a female. Maybe they expect me to respond in like a feminine, motherly fashion. And that's great that someone can look to you and be like, hey, she has like this kind of maternal vibe, and I kind of want to spill myself out to her, express myself to her. And maybe she can help me through this, and that, like I said, that's a great feeling to have, to know that someone feels like they can rely on you. But I try to respond as professionally as I can, not to try and get too much into my feelings, to where it becomes an unprofessional situation, and always use empathy and try to understand it from a different point of view, so that I'm not getting too pulled in emotionally.
That's wow. That's fascinating. Because that is a idea sometimes, like, it's that automatic idea, like, okay, tap into those maternal instincts. And it's like, why do you look at me in that way? But again, it goes back to your biases. It goes back to those unconscious biases that a lot of people hold. So again, just really unlocking and allowing the audience and those listening to kind of just, again, get a peek into what, what a lot of people have to navigate, specifically women, within the military. And again, these are things that women have to navigate in all spaces, in different leadership roles in different industries. So thank you. Juan, how about you? What are some things that you've had to navigate? Of course, I mentioned that you were prior Navy, but also with what you're doing now, or even the conversation you have with working with veterans, what are some things you're hearing or have experienced in regards to navigating leadership and moving up in ranks?
Well, while I was in the Navy, I was an engineer, and so there weren't many of us. So within a division of over 50 engineers, there were only 3 females, and I happened to be one of them. So as we navigate upward mobility in the military, when you're enlisted, there's a career path. And so following that career path and getting equal opportunity to be treated the same way, I would say it's a bit more challenging for women than our male counterparts, in the sense that we don't socialize the same way. When they have boys' night out, women are often not invited. And so oftentimes in the military, we have to find ways to really engage and interact and be proactive. And sometimes that could be taxing. And sometimes that really takes a mentor, right? Whether male or female. And oftentimes I really didn't have a lot of female mentors while I was in the Navy. Just by the nature of my field. But a male supporter, a mentor can also open up doors for you where you're getting the same access or same information so that it levels out the playing field. And so finding those allies, whether it's within your own department or division or across the other components, is always very important. So kind of having some of those employee resource groups and having support from the top and also from your peers tends to be some of those best practices. And again, at the end of the day, is being a part of the team, and because that's really what the military strives for, is unit cohesion and meeting the mission. And that's something that I've learned over the years, both in my military career and in my civilian career, tends to really create the value and provide those opportunities that oftentimes, as women who don't have a seat at the table or don't have access to certain rooms, are subjected to. So.
Well, you just brought us something really awesome, Juan. As far as, you guys probably have heard the term about, if they don't, put you at the table, build your own table. So I want to kind of go through and ask you all, as far as, maybe you're not in a space where you have that supportive leadership, because someone might say, listen, I've tried it all. I want the mentor. I want the support, male, female, whatever, but I don't have it. And you might have a core team of women there that could come together and develop something. So do you see that, women leaders or those that are there at that organization have a kind of like a duty to come together and say, you know what, let's just support each other on this journey? What has been your experience with that in maybe taking other women under your wings? I'm a believer of being a door opener. I've been having this big initiative. Let's be door openers, right? Because I want to always find a way, if I can open up the door or even crack it so someone can get in. I just want you to get a toe in. I just wanted you to be able to get in, then that I have achieved something. So what does door opening look like for you? And do you think that as women in organizations, we have a responsibility to be door openers for one another? And I'll start back with you, Juan, on that door opener mentality that we should have or shouldn't have, or how that should look like.
Right. So, for instance, with Women Veterans on Wall Street, as a co-lead, I work with some of the founders that were really interested in forming a subcommittee under Veterans on Wall Street due to the DoD policies of repealing Women in Combat Exclusion Act. And so back in 2017, we were really looking to expand on what that community would look like. And part of that was working with the existing structure that was already in place, and in terms of the companies and the senior leadership that were opening doors for service members and also veterans who are looking to join in the financial services. And so as co-leads, we had to really come to the conclusion that there are not enough women at the table. So what does that mean, and what does that look like in terms of building out a structure to really help educate corporate employees as well as their hiring manager on women in service? And that took a couple different forms. Number one is having allies, right? Again, I always come back to that term, and focusing on building those networks across different companies, working with the existing leadership to understand what would be most valuable from events perspective or from a communication perspective, and how do we promote and highlight the value of women who have served. And so that was really working along with my co-lead, both men and women, but mostly women, as you can imagine, in understanding how their service, especially in the STEM field, translates to corporate America, and particularly bring on female speakers to talk about their service, kind of very similar to this panel as we're discussing some of the challenges and some of the opportunities, and more importantly, demonstrating that their skill set and talent that they gain from the military is a great attribute, in terms of companies who are looking to really diversify their talent pool and bring on high achieving individuals to really drive the bottom line. And so it was a value proposition, and it was in a way different in the sense that we're promoting women, and oftentimes, as I mentioned earlier, women in military service and those serving on the front lines are often an afterthought, because the image of somebody in uniform is often a white male. And so kind of dispelling some of those truths and specifically highlighting the benefits of having a diverse mindset and bringing in those critical talent is really, the benefit to both the corporation and also to their culture, their corporate culture.
I love that. I love that. I think also, as we need to be exposed and we need to see representation, I think exposing others to those diverse spaces, it opens their eyes and it dispels or shakes up their bias. Because now, again, if they're around more diverse leaders and they're seeing more women in leadership roles, when they do envision military, they're seeing all these different faces and it's just not one look. So that's important as well. So thank you. Brittany, what about you? As far as looking at being that door opener, but also the responsibility that we have as women, do you feel like we have a responsibility to also come together and support each other on this journey? Like, listen, let's just come together and build our own table, okay? Because they're not going to build it for us.
Right. I do think that is important. I like what you said earlier about, I believe it was Juan who said, tap in with your allies. It's your responsibility. Like if you're one of the first to go through, it's your responsibility to figure out, what it takes, what's required of being a first. So, you need to ask those questions to the people. If you're making your own table, you need to tap into your allies, maybe the person next to you, maybe the person who's been there for a while, has some experience, because that could really help.
I love that. Yes. Having allies and tapping into that is extremely important. So I love that. Caitlin, what about you?
I absolutely think that having the open door mindset is our responsibility as leaders, regardless of gender, but obviously for our females, for sure. I used to think when I was lower enlisted, there's no way somebody would want to hire me on the outside with my current skill set that I have. And that's a fault. That's a fault because I was gaining a lot of skill sets that I didn't even recognize until I was shown. Until somebody broke them down for me and said, look at all you're learning, look at all that you've gained. And wow, that is some really awesome stuff that I'm sure a lot of companies on the outside would love to hire me for. It's also our duty to train our replacements. We don't want our replacements to not be as good as we are. It's our duty to be that person that we remember that we might have needed when we were the lower ranking or looking for somebody to just open that door. Because you also have a lot of lower enlisted who want to do more, who are eager, but they don't have that person to say, hey, come here, I'll help you. Let me show you one or two things. And then they're off. And I think that's absolutely our responsibility, is to help our followers, to send them off on the right way and the right path.
I like what she said, because sometimes the door may already be open and we don't realize it. A lot of people, they join the military like straight out of high school, or maybe like after doing a year of college, and they don't realize that what comes with the territory in the military does not come with the territory outside of the military. So, you're getting that education, you're getting the training, you're getting the certs, and it's all, a part of the job. But, outside of the military, people are just going to college, but they're not getting the, the OJT, the on-the-job training. Maybe they're not getting those certificates or certifications on the side, like it's required of us. So I like that you brought that up, because sometimes we forget that what comes with the territory, is outside of someone else's realm, and it kind of benefits us in that way. So just making sure we let people know, like, hey, I know you're required to do this, but this is an open door for you. So, make sure that you're utilizing it and taking advantage of it.
Yeah, great perspectives. The door might be right there, or you even have the keys, and you might be like, I don't have the keys, but that is a fact. I before this assignment, I was a career advisor, and that career advisor role just opened my eyes to just the lack of knowledge, right? And even I had my experience like that where I didn't know, and then I was exposed, and I was like, wow. So I just made it an effort to really educate those that did come into my office and have questions, to really explain to them, okay, I want you to take control of your career. I want you to look at it from this perspective, right? I want you to look at it like, not you chose me as I choose you. Meaning, how am I going to leverage this experience to get me to wherever my big goal is? Do you have a big goal? Let's identify what it is, and let's navigate this career like a chess game, right? Or a checkers game, or whatever game. Maybe it's spades, right? Dominoes. Let's navigate it in that way and really go about it in this way. And then even looking at it from, there is a transition point. There is a trend, because that was the part that just shifted my mindset, right? And, for those on here, yes, I do currently serve full time, but I knew, and I plan on serving for another 2-3 years before I transition out. But I knew that my career advisor experience taught me that I don't want to get to that point in my career where I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards, or I'm like a year from retirement and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. What I have, I don't know. And sometimes you have to go outside to get the support. Sometimes you have to get your mentorship outside. Maybe it's someone I have a mentor from the U.S. Army, this amazing lady, Rochelle T. Parks. She is just dynamic, and she was able to transition out and just do some amazing things. So, sometimes maybe you don't have a core group within that organization, and maybe you can find someone outside, right? The great thing about social media and communities, you can connect with people from LinkedIn, from, UAGC. There's so many different places. From here, you're seeing people. There's so many ways to connect with people. But I think there are always opportunities for you to prepare and plan and start to really get the tools and the information you need to learn how to navigate your career and start building that table to, again, learn how to navigate your career and how you're going to, again, utilize that career to get the best out of it possible. So great insight and input on that. All right. So let's move on. So we're still in the season of first, right? We just talked about Chief Bass. Amazing, right? We see that representation. So we're still in the season of first. So again, we have the first female, you have this chief that's just doing some great things. But what can senior leadership do? What do you think that senior leaders can do? And we can start getting more allies so we can ensure more women are serving in those leadership roles. So what do you think that looks like? So I'll start with you again, Caitlin. What would that look like for us to start seeing? I like seeing first, but I'm just like, man, we are in 2021 or 2022. We're still getting first. Like, wow, isn't that interesting? So how can we start doing, getting more women in those roles? What can they start doing?
I think our senior leaders need to respect the decisions and the changes. I know that we use the term old dogs with the hair changes, the new hair regulations. A lot of people are very not easygoing about that. And I think that it's unfortunate that they think that way. However, they need to respect the decisions of those who made those new regulations. And I think that will trickle down when you see your senior leadership enforcing and respecting what their leaders and their bosses are enforcing, just like the new ball caps, all these new things that are amazing. Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force is changing. It needs to be respected, and it needs to be enforced, and it needs to be brought about in a positive way. And then it starts at the top, and then it'll go down. And if my commander is respecting it, then it's just going to trickle down from there. Everybody's going to say, well, our boss is respecting Chief Bass. So yeah, we definitely should too, even though they should, but we all know how that goes.
Yeah, I would love to hear what her experiences are, navigating, being the first, right? Oh, I would love to hear, because I'm pretty sure there's still some roadblocks. But yes, again, Caitlin keeps bringing up a great point, like the generational differences. So there is also that gap as you see that transitioning happening, like what? Tattoos and so. And it's just like, I spoke with a chief before, she's retired now, but she talked about, honestly, the military is competing with corporate. They have to realize like they're also trying to bring in manpower and great talent. And if someone has a tattoo tattoo that goes up their arm, or someone has a piercing, or someone has, their hair looks a certain way, or considering, the men, they're like fighting. They want those beards to be approved so bad. But it's true. You have men in the African American community that have to navigate just the aches and pains of shaving their beard and what they have to navigate. And, you had, African-American women having to navigate, I have to straighten my hair. My hair has to be like, I have to like wear my hair a certain way. This bundle I have back here, is it too puffy? Like, you just have all these worries. So these changes are really aiding in that inclusivity. And also it's going to attract more people. But, again, you have like a generation that's like, this doesn't look like the Air Force. This doesn't look like it's professional. But what is professional? Is that really a bias that we've been living under? I see that you unmuted, Caitlin. So come on. It looks like you have some more to say.
I was just going to say that having a female in that position is what got the ball rolling, because she can understand firsthand the pains and the aches of having the headache from your hair being in a bun all day. And it's just incredible to see a female in power being able to make those changes for everybody below. And that's just goes to show that what a female in power can do for the entire enlisted force, the entire, Air Force.
Yes, I love it. And again, that's why advocating for putting more diversity in rooms, they say it all the time, the more diversity in rooms, the more you'll be able to understand different perspectives. They'll be able to advocate for women, for men that have to navigate maybe some, issues with the beard. And now they'll get an understanding. They'll be able to empathize and get that understanding. So again, that's why it's so important that in those decision-making roles, you have diverse faces and diversity there, that representation. So thank you for highlighting that, Caitlin. Brittany, what about yourself in regards to that point? Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree with Caitlin on that. I believe that the fact that we got a woman in that position really helped with getting people to kind of giving them the chance to empathize with, what certain people are going through, like, giving them explanations as to why these changes are needed. And, she wasn't afraid to shake the room. Like, sometimes you're gonna have to shake the room, and, that's gonna get everybody's attention. And like, people just don't realize what, others are going through. And the importance about diversity is that when you bring a diverse person or a different person in from a different perspective, they can allow you to see that perspective. If you're having the same, type of person, taking on that same role every time, you'll never see what differences or what changes are needed.
That is correct. If it's kind of like, what do they say? If you like, you can expect change if you don't change. And that also means changing your leadership. It means really deciding that, what, I'm going to be innovative. And innovative isn't just connected to technology. It's also connected to how we choose leaders, really looking at how the societal changes. Again, listen to the voices of the generation of the future and really listening and saying, what, maybe you guys have a point. And again, that's why it's important in those rooms to hear more voices and practice that inclusivity where you're getting those different perspectives, because again, it will aid to that change and those pivots that you need to really bring in the diversity that we're speaking of. Juan, how about you?
Well, so I also want to disclose that I'm not speaking on behalf of the administration. but to all the points that have been made, DEIA is so important, right? Not only having a diverse representation, both at the top and also grooming the next generation of those who will be taking the leadership role. And in a sense, the inclusion piece is making sure that they have a seat at the table, because if they're excluded, how can they feel a sense of belonging? And so with that said, from a talent management perspective, people are not going to stay if they don't feel like they're valued, right? And with military, it's even more critical that you start grooming your leadership from the very bottom, in a sense that we all know you can't just take somebody and just put them in a general flag officer position, right? They come with years of experience, and it is the a session policy that really needs to be addressed and streamlined, and so that we have leaders who are representation of the general population, not only in the military, but across corporate America as well. And so in some of the best practices that have been shared in corporate America and what the SEC recently put out in terms of publicly listed companies having diverse board members to be represented. And so they're in many of them are the first, right? But they're also in a position of authority and in the management role that can clearly articulate the value of diversity. And also the DEIA is not only important in a sense that it creates a culture of collaboration and it's really beneficial to driving the bottom line, but more importantly, it's also a risk management tool, because at the end of the day, you're competing against other corporations, you're competing against other services, and you're trying to get the best talent. And so when you have diverse mindsets, you're actually de-risking. And there's been multiple studies, of course, the more well-known McKinsey study that has demonstrated when you have diverse investment managers, particularly women and people of color, their return investment actually outperforms those that are homogenous. So those are some of the important factors of having first, but it's also being very, intentional about how you groom the next generation. So having metrics, having a retention policy, having training, and being really, like, I guess I keep going back to the intentional portion of it. Having a promotional strategy is also very important. So with that said, I think across the board, companies recognize that, the government recognizes that. I think it's crucial and prudent to have hiring managers and those at the senior level to continue to be a supporter of DEIA.
Wow, that's super, super good. I mean, one individual that I just love a lot of the work that he's done. I read a book from Mark Benioff. He is the Salesforce CEO, and some of the practices and things that he's embedded within the culture of his organization has just been so great. One of the things, he has a certain percentage. Hey, I need to have women within the room when we're having these conversations, right? In the decision making, when we're having these decision making conversations, or we're not having the meeting. I mean, just even having like certain scales, and when the leaders are going out and promoting and they're determining who they want to promote, they are monitoring it in a totally different way. I mean, they've just implemented so many great things within that organization that have been so innovative to ensure that diversity is occurring. So just it's just been some great things that that's definitely a resource to check out, because they've implemented and they show it and they put it on their website, and the proof is in the pudding. So I've loved a lot of the work that they have done. It looks like we have some questions. Hello, thank you for asking those questions. I believe the name is Mubarak Ali. One of the questions that was asked, because this is great on point from where I was going, it was actually related to specifically women serving while also managing family. So look here, it is enough just to do better than with the younger and more junior demographics, which means finding ways for women to return and continue their careers after they have children. So I guess in a way, how would you say in regards to like maybe women navigating family as well as career? I know for me, I'm a single parent, right? And, I've had to advocate. I just had a conversation recently with my chief about, like I won't say it's like a thorn on my side, but I know like I have to navigate work differently. I have to just navigate it completely different because I don't have a spouse at home. And I'm also in a senior leader position, and I'm like, there's just some responsibilities that I have, but I also have, COVID has shaken up after school program, and there are meetings that are late that I'm like, how do I navigate all this while also moving up in rank? So it's like I have heard women that have decided, you know what, I'm going to get out because, you know, I can't balance career and family, or having that fight and that push and pull where they're like, you know what, you've had two military spouses and one has left and chosen, you know what, I'm going to step back and do the family thing because it's not working for me and my spouse. Right. And of course, you know, you have the same dynamic if you have, you know, same sex couples and so on. They still have to navigate. I've heard those conversations having to navigate. Okay, how do we navigate this family structure? While we have to navigate all these different things going on with the workplace. So what are your perspective of that? Like balancing career and family, that work-life balance. How has that been for you? And what can you say are some things that can be implemented to maybe support that? Do you see that there has been a change towards that, creating that balance with career and family? Or do you think there's always going to be one of those moments where someone has to choose? So I'll kick it off with you first, Brittany.
I'm glad that question was brought up. I feel like there are a lot of changes coming down the pipeline to help families kind of manage their family life and work life, to where it's not where you have to make a choice, or to where there are more benefits for them. What was the second part of the question again? I'm sorry.
Pretty much just essentially, you know, as far as balancing work-life balance, family and career, having to make that choice. Like, what is your perspective of, like, have you seen changes? You mentioned you've seen changes, but do you think there's more that leadership can do? Because maybe you've seen changes at the top, but it might have not trickled down to the organizations.
Okay. I just would say that maybe our organizations should definitely keep thinking about the people that work for them, subordinates, keep leaders informed, maybe even have trainings. I think that's an important thing, because there are a lot of a lot of leaders who don't get to experience certain aspects of family until they get a subordinate, or maybe they work for a leader who is a part of that dynamic. Like you said, I had never had a subordinate who was a single mother before, and then, you know, I get one and I'm like, you know, wow, like I need to see what I can do for them. So as long as leaders are seeing what they can do for their subordinates, and organizations are dropping down the training, or just making some changes to where, you know, those dynamics fit the people that, you know, work around us or work for us, then I think that'll be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Caitlin, what's your perspective on the career family balance? Do you see that there's been an improvement? And if you have any recommendations, what are those in regards to, from the top down, what they can do to support the fight of family career?
So I really like what Brittany said. I'm same boat. You can't find out how you can truly help a troop if you've never had somebody with those kind of family issues. So it's really important that we broaden our supervisor skills and figure out how we can help. One thing is, I like to establish expectations with my boss and then the people below me, because if you establish those expectations right up front, then it makes it a little easier for stuff like that. As far as moving forward, I know that the child development centers on base are giving priority to families in specific situations, or families in specific jobs, families, single parents, stuff like that. I think that that's a start. Unfortunately, I don't have any kids, so I can't speak too much further, but I do know that there are definitely things in place, for sure. I hope that it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because again, you might have to supervise someone one day that is a single parent, or someone that's like, I'm struggling right now. My spouse is, trying to figure out what they want to do with their career, and we have a family we're trying to start. Or again, you might come to a season where that's something you want to do. So these are things to start considering. And again, as we progress in leadership, is there again, in the Air Force, we do have these leadership development courses that we go to as we progress in rank. Should there be a portion where it talks about families, right? Supervising someone that has a different family structure and how to navigate leading them. There are these things that we think about. And I don't think we think about that. We think about all the other things that come with leadership, but do we think about, I've never thought about if I have to navigate this issue. So it's just some things to think about to stretch those who are in the process of navigating different leadership situations. So no, that was awesome. Juan, how about yourself?
Well, so while I'm here serving, my husband's actually in New York with my teenagers, being a a superstar. And so with that said, even when we're in the military, my husband and I both were serving and we had young kids. And so I had to leave active duty in order to really make the family work. So in terms of that work-life balance, it was quite challenging when United States of America were in 2 wars. So with that said, I think a lot of our service members have found a way, but I want to give really a credit to the holistic approach that the military has, really focused on in terms of the policies, being more family friendly, understanding that the challenges that military spouses go through are also taken into consideration, and being proactive about childcare services on base and also off base. And as those who are serving overseas, a lot of times the commanders are really taking a holistic approach in understanding that they're making those sacrifices and they're also serving, right? And we don't give them enough credit for those who are military dependents and those who are carrying the load here at home while their service member is away in combat zone. So with that said, I like to say that corporate America, as well as in the federal government, they're advancing in terms of their policies and in being more family friendly. And given COVID, we see this whole work-life balance structure has totally shifted to be a much more progressive strategy, in the sense that when we lost, and especially women, right, who've done the mass exodus from corporate America since COVID has started, we've lost access to childcare services, and so women and men have been put in those positions where they have to figure out how to care for a child at the same time while they're trying to work. And this is something that I think as a nation we're going through, and both internationally we're going through. And so I am very I would say hopeful that some of these will lead to legislation in the near future, in the sense that we're going to see federal budgets and companies putting money where their mouth is and supporting their workers. And eventually, I think that's going to lead to more people working in these remote settings and having the flexibility to care for not only their children, but also for their elderly parents. And COVID is really the factor that has made even as we're speaking here today virtually possible. And so there's always silver linings, and I would like to add that I foresee this is something that it's going to continue to progress. So thank you so much for bringing up that wonderful question.
No, thank you so much. Back to you, Brandy.
Thank you so much, Aisha. You did a phenomenal job moderating the panel today. And thank you so much to our incredible panelists, not just for your insights today, but thank you so much for your military service.